Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Jom Sembang session, Finding Orders in the Midst of Chaos. My name is Dr. Lim. I'm the Vice President of Care Warriors Association, and I'll be your moderator for tonight. Before we move on, do know that this session will be recorded, and we are also playing live on our Facebook page at Care Warriors Association. After this webinar, the recording will be made available on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. Following the presentation, there will be a Q&A session, and you can type your questions in the chat box. Remember to be kind and considerate. If you would like to speak after the presentation during the Q&A, click the raise hand button and we will allow you to unmute yourself. So without further ado, let us begin our session tonight. Well, over the past year, the COVID-19 pandemic has transformed nearly every aspect of our lives. Many are facing challenges with financial difficulties, social isolation, and also having to juggle between multiple roles at home while working from home. All this, if not well handled, can lead to mental health issues such as anxiety and depression. What can we do to turn things around? Today, we have a very special speaker who's also a good friend of mine from Ireland to speak with us on practical tips on finding order in the midst of chaos. Let me introduce our speaker today. Dr. Jasimah Jamir is a Psychiatric Senior Registrar with 9 years of clinical experience. She obtained her medical degree from Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland and subsequently pursued her interest in psychiatry by obtaining qualifications from Royal College of Psychiatrists and Irish College of Psychiatrists. She also has a postgraduate diploma in clinical education from National University of Ireland, Galway. Dr. Jasimah previously practiced in Malaysia and she's now working in Ireland. She is now doing her subspecialty training in liaison psychiatry, and she has special interest in peripartum mental health and functional disorders. She also has vast training experience on different psychotherapies, such as acceptance commitment therapy, mentalization-based therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy. She is also active in voluntary work and is an active member of Muslim Sisters of Erie, and in the past had raised funds for orphans and did charity work for refugees and many others. Let us all welcome Dr. Jasimah. Okay, Jasimah, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Can you see me? Thank you so much, Dr. Lim, for introducing me in such a fancy way.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, and I'm so impressed with the number of participants so far. So I really hope we get something good out of this. So today, what I'm going to do now is I'll share my screen. Can you see what I'm seeing?
Yep, we can see your slides.
Okay. Let's try to present it now though. Hold on. Sorry there. Just a minute now. Okay. Sorry, technical issues here, just a minute. 40 minutes. Oh, there. That's where it is. Okay, now we can see this, yeah?
Yeah, we can see the whole screen.
Okay, all right, lovely. So thank you again, Dr. Lim, for the introduction. I am honored to be invited to come and speak about this today. COVID has really affected everyone over the past 2 years, especially, and it has definitely affected mental health in general. I mean, there are different aspects of mental health that we can work on to hope to improve things, and but today I'm just going to focus on maybe things we can do, because I think the general situation with COVID is that there's a sense of loss of where we are today, what on earth is going on. There are lots of things that have changed, and it feels like control is gone out of our hands. Nothing can be done on our end. And I'd like to focus on the fact that we always have a little part we can do to kind of improve our lives as much as we can. And so today's topic is going to be finding order in the midst of chaos. Right? So, all right, so today's learning objectives, I'm hoping if by the end of this presentation, we can understand a bit of emotional processes of what we go through, what we experience, if we can learn to analyze, identify and analyze current lifestyle difficulties we've been struggling with since COVID, how to take actions. Now, the thing is, there are multiple different tips out there, but this would be a combination of tips I would have read through in my own personal time, even through the job that I'm doing, working with patients and trying to, apply certain tricks, and it seems to have worked. So I'm hoping that it will be beneficial for all of you, and eventually to evaluate our progress. All these things that we're trying to do, is it working or not, for us to evaluate it. So that's the hope that we can achieve by the end of this. Now, just briefly on COVID-19. This is like a slide just to give a bit of a summary of what we've been going through in Malaysia, especially our progress. So on the 12th of January 2020, the first case was found, the first few cases anyway, were found in Wuhan city. And that's when WHO had confirmed, okay, there's this thing that's going on. And by the 25th of January, not too far after that, the first few cases were discovered in Malaysia. Travel bans were started at that time because it was noticed that it was people traveling over, and that's how it started, spreading around. So travel bans started. By the 17th of March, 2020, the first 2 deaths in Malaysia happened, unfortunately. The next day was our first lockdown. And then since then, the numbers have been going up. From the 28th of April, there was some form of organized MCO type thing was happening. And then on the 4th of May, the government was saying, okay, maybe now businesses can open again. So we were hopeful at that time that maybe, okay, this probably going to ease off. And then come July, our first spike of cases in Kedah and Sarawak, that kind of just went up pretty intensely, and that was a big scare. So now what do we do? And then come September 2020, the other big spike in Sabah. And then again, a lot of, oh, is it the political thing that was happening? Oh my goodness, why are people behaving this way? Everyone's lost. And, the stress was just building and building through the time. Come November 2020, we had about 50,000 cases. And within a month, by the end of December 2020, we were hitting 110,000 cases. So that's pretty intense, And that was now end of December 2020. Currently, where we are today, we have gone beyond 1 million cases. So again, it's waxing and waning, it's going up and down, and we've gone through multiple phases of MCOs. There is a sense of what is going on, what to expect. I think the attitude in general is in 2020, when we first got this, there was this big hope that, oh, okay, it'll come and it'll go and that's it, and we can move on with life. There was a lot more hope. But the way things have been going up and down, now a lot of people, I think, are thinking, okay, fine, we might get better. Yeah, okay, vaccination was supposed to help, but is it really now? What's happening? Why are we this way? Lots of questions and unanswered questions, and that can leave us in a very unsettled circumstance and in a position which is not the best. Sorry. So today, so you can see here, there'll be a trail 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm going to do a bit of what we call psychoeducation for us to understand a bit more about the processes and what exactly do we go through, what happens in here that brings the emotions that we're experiencing these days. All right, so now, defense mechanisms, we'll speak a bit about anxiety, Maslow's hierarchy, if anyone's heard of that, and the BioPsychosocial Model. Before I start, could I just ask, amongst the audience, amongst the participants we have today, how many people have heard of these terms, or at least about defense mechanisms? If you can put up a poll on this just to see where we stand. Is that possible? Yes, so I get one yes in the chat, which is great. I don't know, Lim, if we can, is anyone responding to this?
Yep, we have 31 respondents. About over 60% has responded, and they are still responding.
Good, good.
Okay, I think it's stopping. I'm going to end the poll now.
Who has shared poll results? Oh, okay. I don't see it. Do we have the results if anyone can call it out?
Yeah, the result shows that 67% said yes, 33% said no.
Okay, okay. So at least it's beyond half. So that's good news. So defense mechanisms in psychology really it's a broader thing, but if I could simply put it, it's defense mechanisms are thought to safeguard the mind, or the psyche is what we call it, against feelings and thoughts that are too difficult for the conscious mind to cope with. So this makes sense because the current situation with COVID, clearly it's a big stress, and a lot of us are finding it very difficult to fathom. So if we just look at this diagram here, we see an iceberg. All right, so this sometimes it's described this way. If we think when we think of our mind, our psyche, yeah, just our the conscious, the unconscious, all the processes that's happening in there, we'll call it the psyche. All right, so if we imagine the iceberg, the top bit that you see over there, so if you can see my cursor, this area would be what we would consider the conscious. So it's seen, you know, everyone can see what's happening, we can see what's happening. So, and we know what, you know, if I'm consciously thinking or feeling this way, all that is in the conscious. But the unconscious is a massive part which is unseen. Yeah, so conscious. The ego is the aspect of personality that deals with reality. Now, just to say, if anyone's heard of Sigmund Freud, he's one of the earliest or the fathers of psychoanalysis. He would have described this whole thing to be divided to three parts. All right, so that will be the ego, the superego, and the id. So if we talk about the conscious level that everyone can see, the ego is the aspect of personality that deals with reality. While doing this, the ego also has to cope with the conflicting demands of the id and the superego. Now, what on earth are the other two things, right? So now if we're exploring the subconscious or the unconscious, subconscious sometimes is described, you know, just right below the surface, and unconscious is quite deep, right? So say the superego, the part of the personality that tries to get the ego to act in an idealistic and moral manner. So really it's an internal rule, you know, all the good things, or you're supposed to do this, you're supposed to do that, all the values, the value system that we have in there. So the superego is made up of all the internalized morals and values we acquire from our parents, for example, other family members, religious influences, and the society. So the right and wrongs, that kind of is in the superego section. And then the id, the part of the personality that seeks to fulfill all wants, needs, and impulses. The id is the most basic, primal part of our personalities and does not consider things such as social appropriateness, morality, or even the reality of fulfilling our wants and needs. So now, if I could compare this to maybe a child and a parent. So the id would be like this free flowing child who wants to do whatever, doesn't really care what people think. I'm hungry, I want to eat now. I want to play, I want to do it now. You know, so it's all these needs. Now that's just a comparison. We all have the id in us, which drives us to want to do things, and there's no limit to it. So that's the id. And then the super ego is like the parent saying, no, you can't do this. This is not, or this is what our society expects. You know, you should, this is not appropriate, blah, blah, blah. So we have that part of us as well. So the ego is busy trying to deal with all this at the same time and trying to make sense of the reality of what we're, you know, what we go through. Is that making sense so far? If anyone can just put in the chat maybe to just see if it's clear or if anything's not clear there. Yes, okay, the first yes has come in, so I will go with that. So yes, super clear, great. Okay, so we are going to move on then with the different defenses. So again, we don't have to go through all this, but these are the different types of defenses. We may have all of it in us, or we may tend to use more of one more than the other, you know, so they're all different types. And they're not wrong or right necessarily, but it's just that we tend to respond in a certain way. And when it becomes a problem is when it actually affects your ability to move through life or to cope with difficulties or with relationships and, you know, that kind of thing. So we would prefer, so we have, it's divided to pathological, immature, neurotic, and mature. So ideally, we would like to achieve the mature type of defense mechanisms, but again, we can kind of switch up and down. So just in relation to COVID-19 right now, I have noticed personally, and I think everyone would have noticed this, is the, so say for example, if we speak about denial, all right, I know it's put here as pathological, but if it's a bit milder, then it's fine, because we all kind of have a bit of denial every now and then. So see, when the first time when the news came in, and everyone was like, there was this big blow up, and oh my goodness, there's this crazy virus that's going around. We can't see it. It sounds ridiculous, and that. Then you can see kind of like a bit of a split. There will be a small group of people, till today you still see it, that they're like, no, it's all made up. I just can't take it, you know. And it could be, a lot of times it's just a natural response that people just rather not want to know it. And there's a big denial, no, this is not true, it won't happen to me, or it, you know, whatever. But there's a sense of denial that happens there. And then on the other hand, we could probably see, for example, displacement, if we see in the neurotic one. So in displacement, during the COVID period, there was a rise in domestic violence. So with displacement, what tends to happen is, see if someone's going through a lot of stress. So say, for example, I'm at work and I have a boss who is extremely difficult, and I'm really stressed out. I'm really upset with my boss. But I can't really say much to the boss because I might end up losing the job, and this person has a lot of power, so I can't really express myself. Now this thing pendam di dalam, you know, we're really keeping it inside. And then when we come home, there are people who are easier targets to kind of let it out to. Sometimes we don't realize we're doing these things, but it kind of comes out. And at someone in the house or something like this, and that could be happening. And quite a lot of that was, even now, we can't see that that's the only reason for domestic violence, which has increased, but clearly, you know, with the stress of everyone being in the same house together, the stress is really ridiculous. If we think about COVID, it's something that we can't really touch, we can't pinpoint. It's this virus, but we can't physically see it. We don't have a clue. It's this story that's being told about this thing, and it's very stressful for us, and we need to, you know, kind of express that stress out in some way, and somehow we displace it in different ways. So that could be one of them. And then see, when we talk about the mature one, it's actually quite beautiful. In Malaysia, especially now, we have seen a lot of projects and work of people wanting to go out and help people, you know, pay, get food for them, get people to come together to help people who are in need a bit more. The white flag campaign, which is lovely. So that could be seen as altruism or sublimation. So now the stress is really difficult for me. I'm really stressed about it. What can I do? How can I channel it towards something that is more, more productive, or more, it's in a better way. So mature defense mechanisms would be one of those. Again, I hope I'm just jumping through a few, and I do see a comment here. The ego is the processor, the super ego plays the parent, and the id is the rebellious child. Yes, so that's a good summary there. So that's a basic idea. Again, we don't have to know too much of this. I don't expect you to fully understand this. There's a lot of deeper knowledge we need to understand about these things, but just to understand that sometimes how we can catch ourselves reacting in a way that may not necessarily be very helpful is for us to take a step back and reflect a bit. You know, if I'm feeling extremely emotional, usually it's an unpleasant one that we'll notice. I'm really anxious right now. I'm really sad. I'm really upset. I'm really angry at something. Then maybe it's to, you know, to understand where is it coming from and why does it bother me so much? And am I reacting in a way which is not so beneficial, and is it affecting me in some ways and people around me? Is it useful if I'm to, you know, react this way? So it's just to have a bit of an idea. If you have interest, please read up a bit more on defense mechanisms. Actually, is quite interesting. So Now, I'm just going to give a small, it's a diagram. A good friend of mine, Kalpana, has actually done this video for me, so thank you if you're there. This is a bit of an imagery of anxiety, all right? So let's see how this works. So if you see this balance here, okay, between task and ability to cope. So what happens here is, there's a bit of if we think about the balance between task and ability to cope, right? So, oh my goodness. Okay, so between task and ability to cope. So we are trying to aim for balance, which is what you're seeing right now. If a task is being given to me and I'm able to cope, I'm in a comfortable place, right? Now, this is ideal, and life doesn't always be like this all the time, you know? And when anxiety kicks in is when the task seems a lot heavier. So if I was to put it here, this is the diagram I'm looking at. So the task is suddenly so heavy and I'm losing confidence in my ability to cope. So then suddenly this task turns into a threat. It's like this huge catastrophe almost. It's a big burden on us, and oh my goodness, I don't think I can kick in, I can, you know, really feel very, I don't feel settled at all. Okay, so if we were to talk about, and this could be reality, so it's not that, you know, it's all made up in my head or anything like this, but a lot of times something that seems a lot bigger in our heads may not actually be as big a problem. And sometimes it feels like, oh, I don't have the ability to control the situation, I can't cope with the situation, it's beyond my hands right now, I can't do anything about it. And that actually builds up the cycle. Yeah. So if I was to say, so there's a writer, Dan Siegel, he describes this, which I thought was quite interesting. He speaks of how when we all, when we are in our mother's womb, right? So fetuses in the womb, it's a very safe place that we're in, right? So we can imagine that, you know, the psyche and personality and all these things actually develop from the time the child is actually growing in the mother's womb. And in there, it's actually a very safe place. Just imagine you're swimming in this big pool of water, you're just kind of floating about, you're quite happy in there. You know, even if mom gets a bit of a hit on her tummy or anything, there's full of cushion, so I'm not going to feel anything. I don't need to really feel hunger because I'm always getting food from mom's body. I don't need to breathe because somehow oxygen gets into me. So I don't really have to, I just need to be. I just need to exist. And that's a good place to be, you know? And then we come into the world, right? We get through, if we are born the usual way, you know, or I have to get through this birth canal and it's so squeezy and I'm getting all crushed in it. And then I'm coming out and suddenly I'm getting this gasp of air and I'm trying to breathe and I'm trying to, now I have to start breathing and I have to learn how to breathe, because if I close my nose or if there's some fluid somewhere, then I can't breathe. And then I'm going to get hungry and I have to now scream for milk because I don't know what else to do because it's really distressing. So if you imagine, from such a lovely place we were in, one of the first experiences coming out into the world is a very anxiety-provoking situation. And from there, there is an innate feel within all of us still today that we want to look for peace. We want to look for contentment. We want to look for stability, right? And anything that kind of rocks up and down a bit more, that becomes anxiety. It becomes, what is this? I don't think I can cope because it's too much. And suddenly this task becomes a big threat. And that could be part of it. So this is actually quite interesting when you think about how through the centuries, lots of spiritual beliefs, you know, different teachings in different cultures, it's I mean, they're all different teachings, but the basic idea is to find peace. And there is something that we were drawn to it. There's something that brings us close to wanting to go back to the original state that we were in. And that sometimes can be described as emotional memory, because it's the first, there is a part of our brain that keeps emotions and it's a memory of. And if in anything in life that happens, that kind of triggers us, and a lot of times these things happen unconsciously, it triggers and it triggers us, and it reminds us of how, you know, of how, goodness, my survival could be affected in some way. So that's why sometimes when we think about it rationally, okay, I don't have to be this anxious, I don't know why I'm so anxious, but somewhere in here it still happens, and that's because it's something internal that happens, and we need to bring to awareness of understanding this process. Sorry, I'm a bit cold, and so I'm a bit shivery. I hope I'm still clear in my speech. Does that make sense to people? I'm just going to see this and see some responses. Okay, I hope it's still clear. And okay, so we're still looking at this video, and the other side of it is the green. Okay, so if we think about it, the green side will be the other side of it, where we feel totally able to do something and the task is so light. And sometimes we can achieve boredom when we do that. You know, so if someone gives you a task and you are all psyched and ready to do something really, you know, you're all prepped to do something big, and someone gives you something really simple, you could get a bit disappointed. And sometimes you're like, is that it really? I mean, I totally can do this, you know? So the thing is now, again, there's no right and wrong, but that's part of the dynamics of life. And there's always this up and down, but for us to recognize, okay, where are we now? All right. So hopefully that sort of gives an idea of anxiety. Now, I'm going to speak about Maslow's hierarchy. It's going to be a short video, so please do write it in the chat if you can't hear very clearly. I hope everyone can hear this well.
Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a theory in psychology. It argues that there are 5 stages of human needs that motivate our behavior. Abraham Maslow proposed his theory in 1943 after studying what he called exemplary people, such as Albert Einstein or Eleanor Roosevelt. First, there are physiological needs, such as the need to breathe, eat, drink, or sleep. The moment we get enough of that and we feel awake and our bellies are full, we get motivated by the next thing. Now we want safety. We try to earn money, build up resources, and look for shelter that protects us against dangers. Once we are satisfied and feel safe, we have time to think about what we want next. At stage 3, we seek love and belonging. We desire to be close to family and friends, belong to a society, or join a gang. But the moment we feel completely part of a group, we already wish to be a little different than the rest. At stage 4, we look for esteem, self-confidence, and respect from our peers. We want to be someone. If we have money, we buy a fancy watch. If we have a brain, we write or think or work a lot. Motivation to perform and compete is now at its highest. Students, sportsmen, and inventors excel. Neil Armstrong even flew to the moon. Only if we breathe and drink and eat and sleep enough, and we feel safe and part of a group and still special, only then can we reach level 5, self-actualization. Now we can relax, be creative, accept facts for what they are, give back or do whatever we want. No more pressure, unless of course there is trouble below. If you are a leader and believe in the theory, use it. First, make sure everyone has eaten well. Then make them feel safe and help them belong to a group. Once they feel they belong, they are ready to stand out and excel. Thanks for watching. Even if we try to keep it short, each video is quite some work.
Sorry, I will get out of this as soon as I can. Okay, but okay, so just a quick comment before we move on. How did they find it interesting, or was there anything unclear, anything you'd like to ask quickly before we move on? And I can't see my screen. Is everything okay? Is everyone still on board? What's this? Sorry, a bit of a technical issue, but it'll be great to hear if anyone has anything to say in the meantime.
Yeah, if anyone has any questions, you can type it at the Zoom chat box. Those watching on the Facebook, you can also put your questions at the comment section. Then later we will try to answer all the questions if we have time.
Okay, so just in the meantime, while I fix this whole thing, I know one of the questions was on the practical things on parents who are staying at home, isn't it, Lim? I think that was the question, was it?
Yeah, we had a question on Facebook page asking what would be your advice for parents who are working from home, because he or she wants to know how should they use this privilege of working from home to balance their work, spouse, and especially kids.
Okay, so that's a brilliant question because we will be getting into it. So hopefully it will be helpful by the end of it. All right, so what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to skim through the whole thing that we've gone through today. And yes, okay, so if we're going back, just to finish up the last bit of psychoeducation, because we have to start doing things in this. So just the biopsychosocial model, this is a general model that's usually used for health in general, but it's a lovely one to be used in the model to understand the complexity and the multifactorial aspect of mental health. All right, so if we see here, biology, psychology, plus minus emotions, social plus minus spirituality. So it all kind of combines. There are different aspects, but if you can see the lines in the middle here, in between them, that just reflects that they are all linked to each other. So one can be the main problem and that could affect the other aspects of it, and they all kind of interconnect with each other. So if we are talking about biology now, if we look at this model, the idea is to first understand what's the main cause of the problem first. We need to know where the problem is coming from so that we can start working on improving it or fixing it or doing something about it. So first to know what the problem is, and then we want to know how to manage it if we know what the problem is. So if we look at biology, usually when we talk about, say, mental health, if it's due to a biological problem, it could be a genetic problem, it could be substances, so there could be alcohol, drugs, or chemicals of any form, medication. Sometimes those things can become a cause of the problem itself. Hormones, so we would describe this as the physiology of the body. So we are a bunch of chemicals, really, right? On top of everything else. So on the physiological side of our body, sometimes if some chemicals kind of go off balance a bit for whatever reason, it can have an impact on our mental health. So one good example I can give for this would be, say, a woman who's going through menopause, right? It's not necessarily a mental health issue per se, but it has a trickling effect. So someone who goes through menopause, their hormones are all over the place. Next thing you know, physically, they're going to start sweating a lot, or they start feeling like they're bloating up or whatever, they start having different physical symptoms. But a lot of women who go through menopause also describe mood changes, right? So they could probably be experiencing mood lability, we call it, where it goes up and down all the time, or feeling depressed, or just feeling very miserable all the time. And that could be just because of the hormones. So when we want to manage that side of it, we try to stabilize the hormones, so they have hormonal therapy, and a lot of them get out of it. All right, so that's a good example of just describing the biological aspect of the human body that can affect your mental health. So that's one. And then we had the psychology / emotions. So this would be our personality, our attitudes towards life, and how we look at the world, our beliefs, past traumas, or even experiences, anything that we perceive as extremely difficult, that teaches us something in life, but sometimes it can make us look at things a bit too extremely, and it affects the way we look at things, and ultimately our coping skills. Yeah, so all that is to understand. So sometimes this is where it's extremely important to understand our stance on things, because then when it comes to managing it, this is when a lot of people then end up going to a psychotherapist or a counselor or someone like this to kind of map things out a bit. What on earth is happening? And it's for you to discover your style of your attitudes, your beliefs, and how you look at things. So that's that aspect of it. And sometimes even behavior comes into this. So it means, it's a bit of a chicken and egg situation, where if we start looking at things a bit more positively, it will affect the way we behave moving forward, but also the way we behave can change the way we feel. So it can be a chicken and egg type situation. So sometimes the behavior can be put under the psychological box. We can do that too. And then our third box is social plus minus spiritual. Now, generally with the social aspect of things, it's really our environment, what we are surrounded by. So it's very much dependent on our cultural backgrounds and, you know, the situation we're in, family dynamics, you know, what if we're living in that condition, if we're in the family, for example, if the dynamics is lots of stress, the environment itself can cause, you know, some shift in our mental health. Social supports, the more supports we have, which are positive supports, it'll be great, it'll be good. Protective factors, we call it, that will be great, compared to someone who doesn't have anyone in the social network. That will be more difficult. Socioeconomic status, so sometimes, unfortunately, the reality of life is that sometimes money plays a big role in our happiness, but that does not necessarily mean it makes us happy, because sometimes lots of money can actually make us feel quite miserable. But sometimes even the status in the society, how people look at us and where we stand and how we, you know, we are social beings. We're quite dependent on the environment. As much as we think we're so independent, we're not. And, you know, so that's basically the environment. If we think about how COVID has really affected majority of humans around the world right now, it's really affected the social bubble, and the social aspect. And on that aspect, because they're all linked to each other, as you can see the lines here and line there, once that aspect is a bit, you know, unsettled, it goes up and down all the time, that's how it can then link to affecting your psychology, and it can also affect your biology. So a simple example for this is, say, during COVID, lots of people have lost their jobs. It's not just shifting roles or anything, just lost their jobs altogether. Now imagine a family of 5 children and being the sole breadwinner in the family. That's a huge stress, right? And that, okay, now my activity level has changed in some ways. I'm trying to figure this out, but it's really stressful. The fact of life is to support a family, I need a job, but clearly that's not happening. And then see if it feeds into your psychology box here. So your attitudes and beliefs, you know, am I able to see the positives of this? Because it's so hard to see the positives. It is so real that it's a real struggle for me. And then that's how we can get into a spiraling downward spiral type thing of the negativity of the whole thing. And when we start becoming so stressed all the time, then it can affect our biological side, where it affects our sleep. We are always thinking about it. So I can't stop thinking all the time. I'm always anxious. What if this happens? What if that happens? Blah, blah, blah. And then that will affect my ability to sleep. My chemicals are going all over the place. I'm becoming very anxious and my adrenaline is pumping up really high. So next thing you know, my blood pressure is going up very high. And so now it's affected the biological side of things. So we can see how they're all kind of interlinked together. So today, before I just move on quickly, today we're just going to focus on tips, because I can imagine all this while, I think people are always talking and giving talks about understanding this whole thing. And I'm thinking now, because we're feeling really out of control, we're going to use some tools and hopefully we can improve in the psychosocial aspect of things. All right, so moving on. Okay, so we're going to go to analysis now. This means we're going to learn how to analyze our issues really that we're struggling with now. All right. So with this right now, I imagine everyone is prepared with a pen and paper and maybe a ruler if you're a bit of a neat person. And if you're a very tech savvy person, you can use Excel sheets if you like. So the idea is we are going to aim to create a table. And please, one of the materials that's very important is your mind and soul. So please bring that with you as well. So if you look at the next slide here, we've got table, previous, and current. I'm going to speak about drawing up a table. All right. So this is a very fancy, personally hand-drawn table I've drawn there. So it's Monday to Sunday. This is a regular week. It's a table with 7, is it columns or rows? I always get confused. And then the other way would be the 3 sections of the day, which is basically pagi, tengah hari, and malam, which is the morning, noon, and night. All right. Now, this is a rough table. If you guys can draw this up very quickly, if possible, and we'll move on to the next one. Okay. So now that's the magic table that we're going to talk about. Now, the idea is to then try to focus and try to think. Let's think of a general week in my life during the times before COVID. All right. So now every day there'll always be something different, but there is some general sense of structure and a routine sort of in our life. So generally what usually happens from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So just to keep that in mind, all right? And so previous, so let's assume, again, let's assume this was previously your general, this person's general schedule for the week. So let's assume this person works only in the mornings for some reason. So so they need to drive 30 minutes to work every day from Monday to Friday. And then say on Mondays, okay, this person has kids. So in the noon time, or have to pick the kids up for their extracurricular activities. And this, I'm speaking to a majority Malaysian audience. So I would imagine everyone can relate to the amount of activities the children do outside of school. So I can imagine tuition classes of every subject in school, piano classes, violin classes, swimming classes, tennis classes, all these things, right? So I'm so busy running the kids around all the time. So this person is going to be busy on Monday afternoon, Wednesday, and Friday afternoons, trying to figure out where to put the kids. And then the night, okay, maybe Monday, Wednesday, Friday, this person's going to the gym. And then on Tuesday, okay, this person happens to have a spouse. So the spouse is going to do the other parts of managing the kids in the afternoon on Tuesday and Thursdays. So this person needs to go, let's assume this person is an engineer. So this person needs to go to site visits and things like that, which happens on Tuesdays and Thursday afternoons. And then during the evening, because that person's a bit free, so they are now going to be able to visit their parents, because that person happens to be a very filial child who is very good at visiting parents twice a week at least. So, okay, goes over there, right? So then, okay, maybe I could have a bit of a social life. I'm going out for dinner with my friends on Friday nights. Usually, if that happens, it might happen. The one thing that happens every Saturday morning is me going, sorry, not me, this person going grocery shopping or house chores and things like this. And then there's a free type of thing about socializing with friends. On Sunday, this person has decided Sunday is purely family day. We're going out. We normally go fishing, or we go picnicking somewhere, go for a hike, go for a meal somewhere. It's an allocated day for family day. So let's assume this is the general type thing, with differences every now and then. All right. So that is assuming this is the previous situation. So we're going to look through that. So this, my point of this is, if you can think very quickly as we speak of what your life used to be before COVID, all right? And then current, you're going to, yeah. So then if we go to the current one, so let's assume now, what has changed? What have I lost? COVID has clearly killed lots of things in my life, right? That includes loss of role, loss of, function, lots of things, right? So now it's about trying to figure out, if I look at that same table I had before COVID, now work has changed because I'm working from home. This person is working from home, right? Or lost the job altogether, which is terrible. But either way, the structure has gone. So the plan of actually driving for 30 minutes doesn't have to happen anymore. The fact that I need to get up, get dressed, look decent, and go to work, that's not happening anymore, because right now I can do everything online and I can still be in my pajamas. No one really knows, and then say Monday afternoons, picking kids up. Well, now they're homeschooling. None of the activities are happening. Gym is closed, and I used to enjoy going for gym because, I can meet people. I can just get my energy out, and it's lovely. Let's see, visiting parents, or they're of the high risk group. So, oh my goodness, I can't, I can't risk my parents to be in that situation. Or it's the law. I'm not supposed to be meeting people. So that's that, right? On, let's see, dinner outs on Friday nights. That's possibly not going to happen anyway because nothing is open. Maybe the one thing that's constantly still happening is grocery shopping and house chores on a Saturday morning. Okay. And then the afternoon, I'll go to prison if I break rules by socializing my friends. So, okay, that's not going to happen. Sunday with the family. Well, we can't go out, we can't do this, we can't do that. Well, at the most, we've tried to make the best of the situation. We play Scrabble every now and then, and if no one wants to play Scrabble, we watch some movies, and that's about all we do. Now, imagine that happening every week. It's a bit bland. And again, structure, variety in life has become so honed down to just a few things, and it's so boring. I'm seeing the same faces all the time. As it is, if I'm working from home, the children are all over the place. If their kids are around the place all the time, I need to focus. I can't do this. Oh my God. So people have lost a lot of sense of structure and routine, which, is one of the big issues. So this is part of the analyzing. If you haven't had time to really go through yours, this is just to give you an idea so that later you can have good time to reflect on what your situation is. All right. Okay. So that's the analyzing part. So then what actions can we take now that we know, okay, now this is my life, this is the problem, what do I want to do? So the idea now is to fill that table up again, right? So there are a few tools I'd like to introduce you to today. The Wheel of Life, Covey's Matrix. This is Stephen Covey, who had written the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I was told that my late grandfather's favorite book was this, and I do agree to an extent. That's a very good book. And then there's this stupid easy technique, which is to build habits. And if you're interested, you can look into this book called Many Habits by this guy called Stephen Guise. And then I'd like to introduce you to the Pomodoro technique if you haven't heard of it. It's a simple one. I'm sure everyone would have done it at some stage without realizing. And also the table, the remarkable table I've drawn up for you guys earlier, the table. So these are the tools we'll probably need. All right. So if we were to go to the Wheel of Life now, let's assume our life could be as colorful as possible, because we are not here just to work. We are not here just for the family. We're not here just for myself. We are a well-rounded, full human being. We would like to be that if we're not yet, right? Now, if you look at this wheel, it's just a guide. It doesn't have to be your life, but the idea is if my life is a wheel, and if I could divide it into a few different parts, what would I like to have in my life? You know, what are the aspects of life that I need to focus on? So say, for example, in this model that we have, physical environment, business and career, finance, health, family and friends, romance, personal growth, fun and recreation. Let's assume this is the model we want to use for now. And if you can see, there are some scales here. So this is the hub, and it spokes out. It's the little spokes going out, and they all have a scale from 0 to 10. Let's assume 0 is zilch, like nothing is happening, and 10 is not ideal, but 10 is where I'm actually quite content. I'm happy where I am. Of course, there's always growth for every part of our lives, but I think at the moment I'm quite comfortable. So let's assume comfort is 10. All right. Of course, we've always, because if not, we'll never reach 10, right? Because, oh, no, I could do better. I could do better. So we don't want that attitude. We don't want that mindset. We want to see coming to a sense of contentment is where we want to get to, right? So now when we see this part, sometimes it's very important. If you can visualize things and put it down on paper, it actually helps us have an idea of where we are in life. All right. So let's assume this person's life, they've noticed fun and recreation actually 4 only. I mean, that's the least actually compared to everywhere else. And then if you look at personal growth, business, career, family, that's the most. It's at 7.5. It probably could do a bit better, but it's not the worst compared to the others. And then if you look at health, 5, not the worst. Finance, 6. So the idea is we have an external wheel here. That's the one where all the 10s are touching. Of course, life cannot be that perfect also, but at least we can have a bit of a gauge, where are we? So we are trying to form an inner circle, and this is where it is. When we look at the thing that has been fulfilled here in this wheel, it doesn't at all look like a wheel. It looks like some craggy looking colorful rainbow pizza, right? So it doesn't have an actual a wheel. So the aim now is, okay, how can I level this thing out to at least look like a fairly decent wheel, right? So when we look at this, I'm like, okay, fine. So I mean, everything can do with some improvement, but okay, I think the 3 parts where it's 6.5, 7.5, okay, they're okay. But what's the least? What can I at least focus on a bit more? So it looks like recreation is about 4. How can I pump it up to maybe 5 or 6? You know, what can I do? What is missing in my life right now? When I think about COVID and how it's affected people's lives, finance has been a big part that has really affected lots of people and their attitudes towards things as well. You know, people who had a job, who had lost their job, previously could have been at 7 or 6 even, like this diagram, and now has suddenly gone down to 2, for example. right? And then maybe health could be at 5 before, because some level of physical activity was happening, but now I'm just sitting and being a couch potato, and I'm just really being sluggish and sedentary, and I think I'm about to die, not because of COVID, but because I'm just sitting and doing nothing. So that could be part of it, you know. So let's see, fun and recreation, that's a huge part that has affected loads of people, because again, we're social beings and we don't realize this. We take things for granted all the time. And one of the things we've really taken for granted is how much we could do outside to give us fun and recreation. But the other thing that we can learn from this is that we shouldn't be depending so much on the outside to give us some form of fun and recreation. We need to be a bit more creative. And how can we find ways to kind of feel a bit better? And what can we do to not depend on the outside, but what joy can I find on the inside? And that is something we'll talk about later. All right. And so all these other parts. So this is, again, this is just a guide. It doesn't have to be just this, but then maybe you can start thinking, because for some people, for example, if say personal growth could be learning new things. It could be for some people spirituality, for some people doing some extra voluntary work or whatever. So if we think about the defense mechanisms earlier, and if we want to channel out our energy that we're feeling, maybe we can shift it towards altruism, sublimation of some form, and that will encourage personal growth. And the beauty of any circumstances we're being put in life, really, is to teach us something. And if we can focus on what am I learning from this, and what can I develop in myself that I did not have before, we can give it a bit of a twist, rather than saying, oh my God, this has been done to me, because it's real, it is true, it has happened, and we cannot deny that bad things have happened, but there are good things that we can work towards. And what can I grow out of this? Because I want to be on top of this. I want to empower myself, because one of the things that COVID has done is that a lot of people feel so helpless, and they just feel like, that's it, you know, everything is just taken away from me. And this sense of agency, this sense of empowerment is totally stripped off, and we need to get that back. So I hope this makes a bit more sense as well. So that's the wheel of life. And so now, when we think about this, now we've done the table, we've already kind of figured out, okay, I need to fill up some gaps in life, because, you know, it's just, you know, it's really empty right now. My table looks ridiculously skeletal at this stage. So, okay, I need to write a list of things I'd like to start doing in life, but what are they? Where do I start? What do I do? So I find this wheel of life extremely helpful, because then what happens then is that now we have an idea. Okay, if it's the fun recreation thing, okay, maybe I can add on a few things. So now you're going to write a list of things, and they are little goals you'd like to achieve. Now, again, we do come from a world that focuses a lot on outcome. So it means if you do well in exam, then you'll get rewarded. If you fail, then you're the worst creature ever. That's a mindset we seem to be, you know, but if we can focus on building ourselves, developing a habit, developing, you know, putting an effort into growing yourself, regardless of the outcome, the process, we want to celebrate the process of it. And so then there's no right or wrong, because, oh, okay, this doesn't seem to be working, let's find something else. And we won't be so punitive to ourselves when we have that kind of a mindset. So, so then we're going to write a list of goals. All right. So in that process, when we are writing now, how do we, what's the word? How do we prioritize them? What is more important? How much do I put this? Do I put this 3 times a week? Do I do this every day? Do I do this 5 times a day? You know, so you're trying to figure out what's important, what's not. So this is where I personally think Covey's metrics is probably the best invention, thanks to our man, Stephen Covey. So let's look at this now. If we see here, Stephen Covey's time management matrix. I think lots of people might be familiar with this. So if we can draw a table, 2x2 table, all right, and then we're going to write it up as not important, important on one side, urgent, not urgent on the other side. So we have quadrant 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, if we look at quadrant 1, it'll be urgent and important things. So out of that list that you're going to look at, you're going to see, okay, what are the things which I would consider as urgent and important? So these things could be things in crisis, for example, which you can't really plan out of a list, but it could be processing problems. It could be projects with deadlines. So, oh, I need to submit this, or like me, for example, who's quite a last minute person. So I should practice what I preach. But see, for this presentation, lots of last minute things. So that kind of had to be squeezed into my quadrant 1 because, oh, I need to do this because I have this presentation later, right? So that could be 1. Now, then when we go to quadrant 2, that will be not urgent, but still important. So it could be relationship building, it could be planning, it could be recreation. Now, what Stephen Covey says, which makes a lot of sense, is that we should focus on filling up the quadrant 2 as much as possible. Why? Because they're important things, but we're not pressured to having to do them now. Because in life, there will always be all 4 quadrants. There will be something that's urgent and important that wasn't planned out and we didn't realize it was going to come, and now I have to deal with it now. But that's also very much stress inducing, right? And we don't want to be in a highly stressed situation all the time. So we want to save that energy for when it actually comes up. Now, the majority of the things can stay in quadrant 2 then, because then if I think, okay, say for example, in quadrant 1, projects with a deadline. Now, if I got a project 2 months ago, and if I can somehow work around managing my time to make me be a bit more consistent in doing this throughout the 2 months, then the stress won't be so high because it's not urgent, but it's important. I need to get it done by a certain date, but you know, I'm still in a comfortable place. And so that is a happy medium. That's a good place to be. And you want to, if you can, within your control, you want to kind of squeeze it all up to quadrant 2. And then we have quadrant 3, which is not important things, but pretty urgent. So they could be like emails that you have to respond to, or phone calls that you just have to quickly do it, to just get it done and over with, and you just have to get it done. Or even interruptions every once in a while. They're not important, but they just happen to happen so urgent, you have to kind of deal with it. So those kind of things. So that would be quadrant 3. Quadrant 4 will be not urgent, not important. Now, not important doesn't mean it's not important. So just to keep that in mind, because sometimes we can't be filling our 16 hours of our day. Say, assume we sleep for 8 hours. We can't be using 16 hours of doing quadrant 1, quadrant 2. We will burn out for sure. So sometimes we kind of have to give some variance to it, right? So we kind of, every once in a while, we want to do some downtime as well, just to kind of recuperate a bit, or, you know, and that's where you kind of want to do quadrant 4 stuff. So time wasters is a good one. The other ones I don't really agree with, but time wasters is a good one. So sometimes we feel like, okay, you know what, I just need to sit down and just bleh for a while, right? And the thing is, that too can be mindfully practiced, and that too can serve us as a human, as a person, as a, you know, where we can still enjoy doing something, but we are reaping benefits out of it. It is a productive activity of doing nothing, but you're doing something. So that's your quadrant 4. So if we see this and we want to look back at our list and our list of goals, we can probably put maybe even, if we're going to go by percentage, maybe 10% quadrant 4, maybe 20% quadrant 3, maybe just 5% quadrant 1, and then the majority of the rest of it quadrant 2, or something like this. And what happens with quadrant 2, once we realize all these different things that we want to fulfill in quadrant 2, then we have to come up with a plan. Okay, how do I build a habit to start getting myself rolling? Because again, with COVID, a lot of people have, all of us, speaking for myself as well, have lost a sense of motivation. What's the point of life, really? So to start anything seems like the biggest deal, and we need to start picking ourselves up again. So how do we do that? And that will be the next section, time and task management. Now, so far, before I move on, is everything clear for everyone, or does anyone have any questions? Maybe not yet, and we shall move on. So unless there's anything else that pops up in the chat, I'm not seeing anything. So what we're going to talk about now is then habit building. All right. So the idea of stupid easy is to break a task down to the extent that it's too easy to not do it. So say, for example, one of the examples that was written in the book, which I thought was quite interesting, is that, okay, my goal is to achieve, to be able to do 100 push-ups a day. All right. Now, this is not necessarily COVID related, but you know, just saying. So I want to do 100 sit-ups, 100 push-ups by the end of whatever, or no timeline. I just want to be able to do it. So I'm going to break it down because I have to build it up. I can't do 100, so I have to start building it up. Now, a lot of us tend to feel that if it's not hard-ish, then it's not really worth doing it because it's too easy, it's too stupid easy, right? And what that does is it tricks our minds by saying, if you want to do it properly, and then we can't sustain, and then we don't end up doing it. So we become hangat-hangat tai ayam, which is a very typical phrase that we all are familiar with. So we want to cut it down, and the idea is to be sustainable. We want to make sure that it is so doable that it's almost embarrassing if you don't do it. That's basically it. So the idea of this push-up thing is then, okay, I'm going to make it a point that I'm going to do one push-up every single day, right? So it comes to a time where I don't have motivation to do it. I just can't do it. Oh my God, I don't have motivation. And then you will have that talk in your mind like, it's ridiculous. One push-up does not need any motivation. You need willpower. So I know one of the questions that was posted before this talk was, how do I find motivation? I think that was one of the things that was posted out there. And the thing is, now we have to shift our mindset. The idea is we're not going to focus on motivation or depend on motivation, because motivation goes up and down depending on the day, depending on our mood. So it's a very unreliable source of productivity, right? So now willpower though requires energy, right? And we are lazy creatures. So we want anything that requires the least of energy. So say for example, with willpower, it's embarrassing not to do one push-up a day, and you want to also trust yourself. So this is the other thing. One thing we don't realize is that we have to become reliable people to ourselves. Okay, so just take this in again. We have to learn to become reliable people to ourselves. Now, say for example, I'll take Lim, since you're here, Lim. I'll just say, we have been friends for a long time now, and every time okay, say if we make a date lah, we say we're going out to the gym, hey Lim, come, let's go jalan or something, and then you're like, yeah, okay, what time? Tomorrow 5 o'clock. Okay, fine, June. 4:30 I text and say, hey, cannot lah, sorry, something came up. Okay, fine. One, twice, okay, fine. And then next thing you know, want to go out for dinner. Hey, all our friends are going out for dinner, come lah, let's go. And then last minute, oh, I don't turn up. Now, there are reasons why people behave that way, but after a while, Lim will find me a very unreliable person. So what will happen after a while is, if a friend says, hey, call Jas out lah, come, let's go do something. And then Lim will say, okay lah, we'll just invite, but we will see her when she comes lah. We don't know if she'll ever come or not. It becomes a joke, but it's actually not a very nice place to be, because you become unreliable. People can't trust you fully. Now, with that, Lim won't be depending on me if she said, Jas, I have an emergency, can you pick up my kids? You know, she won't be coming to me, she'll be going to a more reliable person, because Jas, don't know, you know, sometimes she can, sometimes she can't. Now, apply this to ourselves, because we're quite good at promising people things and we do things for people, but we're not necessarily that with ourselves. Now, I would speak for myself first as well. Sometimes when I think about it, if I need to go to the gym and I have an appointment that I'm going, and I promise a friend that I have to go, or I have a personal trainer and I have an appointment and I'll waste my money if I don't go, so I'll make it a point to go, right? And I want to be reliable. I don't want him to think that I'm a ridiculous person or something. But see, if I was to say, okay lah, tomorrow after work, 6:30, let's go to the gym. It's not for a class or anything. I'm just going to go and do a set of things. Last minute, suddenly, oh, I was too tired at work, I cannot, you know. So we will find excuses and we just don't do it. What happens in that process is that we are chipping away the confidence that we have in ourselves. And that is actually a very, very destructive thing, right? So what happens is then, each time it happens, I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I can stick to a healthy diet. I don't know if I can stick to a healthy lifestyle. I don't know if I can do this because I don't trust myself. So one of the things that we need to do with this is we are going to cut the habits down to stupid easy. But then the next thing is we're going to stick to willpower, because each time we do it, it's not because I'm motivated or not, but it's because I have promised myself and I'm going to do it regardless, because I respect myself. I have said to myself that this is really important and I'm going to do it, and that's it. And it's going to get done. All right. So that's that. So now in this list, again, list your habits. Why? Always know why you want to do what you want to do. Okay. So the thing is, now I'm not going to learn how to do yoga because it's such a cool and hip thing, and it's good for me, right? And okay lah, so that's it. That's all I want to do with it. It's difficult to stick to something if it doesn't mean too much to us. On the other hand, see, for example, if I was to take reading as an example, you know, in the wheel of life, fun and recreation. For some people, reading is a painful task. So if you're going to put that under self-growth, right, then you have to find out why. Why do I want to start reading again? What is it going to do to me? What meaning does it bring to me? How do I feel? Or what do you think I can achieve? So this is a process we need to kind of reflect a bit deeper on why we choose to do something. Because for some people, reading is so enjoyable and it's so therapeutic for them that it can be put into the fun and recreation section because it's fun for them. So it's different for different people. There's no wrong or right. And that's why it's always important to know not to judge your choices. It's just a choice. It's a description of a choice, but it's just a choice. And I need to know why I personally want to do it because it has to mean something for me. All right. Activity-based versus time-based. So also when you're dividing things, you want to see activity-based activities, things that you need to achieve by completing the task. Time-based is task needs to be completed based on time, if that makes sense. So say, for example, activity-based would be, again, I need to be able to do 100 push-ups. And so regardless of the time, I need to get it done. So that's an activity-based thing. Time-based would be, okay, I need to submit my presentation by next week, and therefore I have to divide my time from now till next week, 7 days. How do I fit it into my thing so that I can start spreading things out and it won't be so overwhelming that we think there's just too much and I don't know what to do. So that's part of it. Reward is extremely important to reward yourself each time you do something because you've already promised yourself and you did promise and you did fulfill your promise. But again, reward for the effort, not for the outcome, not for the achievement in itself. Or what is achievement? It's the effort, not the outcome. So basically, if I've already been doing this every single day, 1 push-up a day, I've not achieved my 100 push-ups, that doesn't mean I deprive myself from reward just because I haven't reached the 100. It means I'm doing it one and I'm respecting myself for doing what I promised myself to do and reward yourself for that with whatever reward, right? And then it's important to track your progress. Again, willpower versus motivation and schedule versus expectation. That means each time you see your table, okay, I've done this, put a little tick, 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 tick. Okay, I've done this, I've done that, I've done that. If I like it or not, I'm going to do it for the sake of it being on the schedule. It's not because, oh, I expect, okay, like if today I don't do it, I'll do 2 of them tomorrow. No, it doesn't work that way. It's about sticking to the schedule, whatever it is that you've come up with. Whew, I hope that was me not flying. But then the next thing is the Pomodoro technique. So Pomodoro technique is just one thing which I personally find extremely helpful. I don't know if it works for everyone, but I do think it makes things more doable. So say, for example, we have a degree that we're doing, for example, all right? So we have to achieve by, in the next 12 months, I have to complete 4 modules. Okay, so let's cut it down. 4 modules, I'll divide it by a year, so it'll be 3 months. 3 months, let's cut it down. How often can I study within a week? Maybe 3 times a week. Okay, what day are they going to be? We're going to jot it down in your table. Now, how long can I spend per time to do this? And how much material do I need to put in that period of time? So then we're going to have to see, sorry, I don't know if you can see this now. Yeah, so then you're going to see, okay, so it comes down to, okay, what happens on a weekly basis? Okay, this part of module, this much I have to do. Okay, maybe it's about 3 pages a day that I have to do, and 3 pages a day, and then I have to do a bit of an assignment. So how long would that take? Maybe about 2 hours of my day, 3 times a week, every week, for the next 3 months to complete 1 module, and then to complete all 4 modules within a year, or something like this. All right. So once we've coned it down to the 2 hours that we're talking about, so now it's very difficult. I mean, a few good people can do it, but I know I can't. My concentration level kind of freaks out after a while, but I think that's just generally human. So the stepwise step plan here is 1, decide what task you need to complete. So again, let's assume it's this thing that I need to study. Set the timer to 25 minutes. Now, Pomodoro speaks about 25 minutes and then a 5-minute break to make it a half an hour so that's easier, but we don't have to be so strict about that. Depending on the task, some tasks you need 45 minutes to really get into it. Some tasks you just do within 15 minutes, you're fine. So the idea is set a timer. Sometimes it seems very artificial, but initially to create a habit, it really helps when you do have a timer right there and you just have to not distract yourself, because you know, okay, the time is coming, and when the time comes, then I'll have a break, right? So set the timer. Let's assume it's 25 minutes here. So you're gonna I'm just going to focus on studying this amount of material, and it's going to be within 25 minutes. Whether I finish or not, that's regardless. And then number 3, work on your task until the timer rings. Number 4, take a short break for about 5 minutes. So the idea is 25 and 5, but as I said, it can be any other way as well. And then you do this about 4 times. And now at this stage, you will have done 4 sets of half an hour, which is 2 hours. By then you may have finished or not, but then you take a good break. Now, to me personally, 15 to 30 minutes is not enough, but for some people it's enough. So it really depends on how you want to work around it, but that is one of the tips we can do to start. The whole point of me talking about all these different tips is how to get back to the basics, to start from scratch. Because sometimes we feel, yes, I've got all these big, plans in life and all these goals I have in life that but I want to achieve and all that. But how? It's too big, it's too overwhelming, it's too daunting that we don't do anything at all. And then we beat ourselves up for not doing anything in life. Now 2020 has passed, 2021 has gone through halfway. It feels like it's only been 2 days, because life has suddenly, I don't even remember 2020 happening. Suddenly it's already 2021, and you don't want to keep going on with life that way, because that can really suck you down and start feeling, what's the point of life this way? And then when we feel so despondent about life, that's when we start projecting, which is one of the defense mechanisms, right? We'll start putting it out to the world. We become very negative about things. We'll start putting it out. It's everyone's fault now. It's the government's fault. It's the whoever's fault. It's this person who took my job away. And we become a very blame-focused group of people, which is, it may be true that it's someone's fault, but it doesn't do any good to our soul. So we need to focus on our soul a bit here. Okay, so that's the end of the before I move on for a bit more. How are we with time and everything? I hope we're okay. Lim, are you there?
Yeah, we have actually passed 10 o'clock. Thank you everyone, those who are still staying here with us. I think the topic is really interesting. We still have many participants here with us, so I hope that all of you can bear with us. I think Jasimah will finish soon, right?
I will. I really will try. I'm so sorry. I'm really bad at just going and going and going. So I will do as quick as I can, and it'll be great if people can stay. Okay, so reflections. Now, very quickly. Now, once we started something, we've got this table, we've got a plan, we've got a list, we've got how to organize our lives, what to do, and all these things. Okay, great. Then now, progress report is also very important, because you want to see which way we're going. So regular check-ins is extremely important. So we can make it a weekly thing, every Sunday maybe, or every 2 weeks, every month, whatever. And you want to just check in. How much have I achieved in this whole process? And where am I getting stuck, and why am I getting stuck? Again, it's about being compassionate to yourself. It's not about blaming, oh, you stupid fool, you're ridiculous, I knew you can't do it. That kind of critical talk is not allowed to be happening, right? But we're going to look for room for improvement. Why am I getting stuck? There's a reason why things are not moving on, and I have to look into it. So one of the things I want you to then think about is never ever cheat. As I said, oh, okay lah, I won't do my 1 push-up today, but I'll do 2 tomorrow. No, that's just shifting the rules or the schedule, and we're not going to do that. We're going to do it because we've promised ourselves to do it, and I'm just going to find, unless, okay lah, there's a dire emergency that comes up, which doesn't happen that often, but we're great at giving excuses. So that's one. Be happy with all progress. This is extremely important, because it actually slowly but surely shifts our mindset towards things, for us to start being grateful about little achievements. Again, from the world we come from, the world has come to a stage where it's all about achieving 100%. If you don't achieve 100%, you're not good enough. You have to this. You miss out on all the small things that can give you joy, and then we are hoping to be joyful about things. It's a small thing, little bricks that need to be built up. So we have to be happy with each progress. Reward often after each habit. Again, don't reward yourself just because you've achieved your outcome. Reward for the fact that you actually put the effort and respected yourself and went with it. All right, so you got to reward yourself. Maybe not chocolate all the time, but anything else that brings you some form of feel of reward. Stay level-headed. again, sometimes when we get really overwhelmed by all this, we're going to have to pull ourselves back, tell ourselves we are human beings who will experience pleasant and unpleasant experiences, emotions. So we don't have to run away from bad emotions all the time. Just because I feel sad, I don't need to run away and distract myself. Just because I'm feeling anxious, I don't need to run away from it. Let's learn to be okay. Let's come to tolerance with all the different types of emotions that we have and to be okay with it. So that's why sometimes I feel, even if you can take time out, you know, if people who do meditation, if you can fix a certain time of the day to really stick to it and do it. For people who do regular prayers, for example, that could be a form of meditation. You're busy, and then, oh, I'm going to sit down and just bring myself there. You're going to take a step back and level your head a bit and then try to move forward a bit. And then if strong resistance felt, back off and go smaller. So this means if you have decided to do something and you somehow just finding it really, there is some resistance there, then maybe take a step back and say, okay, maybe it's still not stupid easy. I still need to go a bit smaller, bite it smaller, and maybe try that one. Maybe half a push-up. I don't know if that works, but you know, if you can push it a bit smaller. If it's not every day, maybe, okay, 3 times a week, maybe I'll do 1 push-up, something like this. Try to go back until it becomes so doable. And never think a step is too small, right? So sometimes like, okay, it's ridiculous. If I want to do 100 push-ups, there's no way I'm going to achieve that if I'm going to just do 1 a week. You know, it's never too small. It's better to do something rather than nothing. All right. And again, intention. Why am I doing this? Why did I choose to do this? And then sometimes during progress report, reflection and all this, you're thinking, okay, maybe this is not really what I want to do. Maybe something else might work, or maybe I can shift it a bit. Why? And this is again a process for self-discovery as well. In the process of doing all these things, you learn about yourself in the process, which is amazing, I think, you know. And ultimately, gratitude and compassion. I'm just going to finish up. This will be the last bit. It's going to be a last video, and then we should be done. Thank you so much, everyone. So that's the last bit, and gratitude is one of the practices that we need to always practice, not because it's just a nice thing to do, but it actually changes our mindset. If we want to focus on certain things in life, we have a myriad of things in life to focus on. And if we have things to focus on, to complain about, there'll be loads of things. I think we always have an ample amount of it. But we always have an ample amount of things to be grateful for, and nothing is too small to be grateful for, because there's nothing too small to complain about as well. But what do the attitudes do to ourselves and our mental health? Ultimately, it's not about giving credit to the world, it's about feeding your soul. And that's why, again, in many spiritual practices, gratitude practice is just the huge chunk of it. And I do see a lot of that in mental health, and I think that's something we need to always be a bit more focused on. We forget to do that in hard times, and that's understandable, but we just need to focus, remind ourselves to do that. That's that summary. It is a real challenge that we're going through during the COVID times. It's not easy, so validate that and acknowledge it. It is real and it's really difficult. Yeah, we have to focus on self-compassion, because it's very easy to beat ourselves up over lots of things. Be creative when you're doing all these ideas, this list and all this. Be creative, be curious, be excited about things. One person that pops in my head is my friend's mother, Kalpana. Her mother has gotten into sewing or knitting or something, and it's brilliant. You know, I like, whoever thought of something like that? I wouldn't have, you know, but she really got into it, and I think it's done a lot of joy for her. So again, for different people, be creative, get excited about things, be, you know, look forward to wanting to look for things to do. You know, don't feel like a victim of the world, because we can be victims, because we can be, but we also are not entirely that. You know, we are a good bag of lots of different things. So be curious about it, look forward to it. Find meaning in the things you do. So each thing that you do, why am I doing this, and how does this feed me? It's not to make people happy, make people think that I'm all great and cool. No, it's about me. What can I do? And to regain empowerment. The way we are going with the COVID situation now, I think people have come to a stage, sure, some lockdown is going to come up at some stage anyway. Even if we open up, this is going to happen. That's the attitude we have. So we are not going to depend on what's ourselves, so that regardless of what's happening around, we will react to it because that's a natural process, but we are going to find ways to need to focus on what will empower us on the inside and to find joy within the inside. And so that's that. That's my bit. Thank you very much, everyone, for your patience. And I don't know if anyone's up for further thing. I'll put it back to you, Lim.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Jasimah. Wow, I think that was a really comprehensive and concise presentation over 1.5 hours. Thank you all those who are still staying here with us and all those watching on Facebook page. Well, we have got quite a few questions, but perhaps due to time constraint, we might just answer one questions and probably finish it by 10:30. Okay, so let's see. This is a really interesting question from participant in Zoom. Is the effects of this pandemic and the lockdown different between urban versus rural and the affluent and poorer societies?
So this is really interesting, isn't it? Because one thing I've noticed now, I'm currently practicing in Ireland, so I can't speak for the rest of the world, but I assume there is some commonalities to it, is that in rural areas, I've noticed how, because the way they live their lives, and in Ireland, lots of people do farming in rural areas, you know, and there's lots of green and lots of lovely things to do. And even if there was a big shift, you know, due to COVID, if work has been affected or whatever, somehow it didn't seem to have affected them too much, or even if it has, there are alternatives to do things, which I think is quite lovely compared to urban patients. They seem to be hit quite hard, more so because a lot of their lifestyle activities were very much dependent on the outside and dependent on finance, really. And, you know, again, I mean, it's not black and white, but that's the general pattern I've noticed. I don't know if you've noticed anything yourself, Lim, in the cohort in Malaysia.
Yeah, I think, I mean, just speaking from my personal experience, there was a difference when I was in the East Coast and now. So I was in the East Coast during the pandemic and it didn't seem to affect us that much, probably because there wasn't as much activities as we have here in KL. So yeah, that was my experience. Yeah. Okay, so the rest of the questions that we have here, most of it has already been covered by our presenter, basically on emotions, on motivation as well. All right, take-home message is Dr. Jasimah has already mentioned. Anything else you want to say?
From my end, thank you so much for your patience, for listening and just listening. And I really hope it has benefited people in some way. I really hope so.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Jasimah, for willing to share with us this really fruitful and wonderful presentation. We've learned a lot on the Pomodoro technique, right? And how we can prioritize our task. And it's also very interesting where you explain on the displacement and other defense mechanism, and that sort of explains on why certain things happens and certain emotions. Also on the biopsychosocial spiritual model, that is also really important and interesting. Thank you very much, all of you who have been staying here with us over the past 1.5 hours. We would appreciate that if you could fill up a feedback form, you could scan it with a QR code or click on the link that is available at the Zoom chat. If you would like to donate to us, you can donate to the Care Warriors at Maybank account. And to know more about Care Warriors, you can go to www.carewarriors.org.my. Those who would like to volunteer, you can drop an email to persatuanwirakasih@gmail.com and the team will get back to you. Don't forget to follow our social media page on Facebook and Instagram. All right. We want to take a group photo with all participants. Those of you who would like to show your webcam and would like to take a photo with us, we will later share this photo on the Facebook page. Can do so. You can turn on your webcam if you like to. Otherwise, good night and stay safe. Our next webinar will be in September and it will be on suicide. So hope to see you all there again. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Lim.